Welcome to the latest Gramophone podcast. I'm Martin Cullingford, editor of Gramophone, and today's episode focuses on a newly released recording of Brahms's Ein deutsches Requiem on Bis from the Bach Collegium, Japan, and conducted by Masaaki Suzuki, who is, along with his son, harpsichordist, and indeed the group's principal conductor Masato Suzuki, my guest today. The album has just come out, but I actually met with them to record this episode of the podcast last year, just after a performance at the BBC Proms of Bach's St. John Passion. And as you will hear, it was fascinating to discuss some of the relationships and differences between these much-loved choral masterpieces. I hope you enjoy the podcast. I'm delighted to be joined today in, highly appropriately, London's Japan House by Masaaki Suzuki, the founder and music director of the superb ensemble Bach Collegium, Japan, and also by Masato Suzuki, its harpsichordist and principal conductor, and as we shall come on to discuss, a very integral part of the group's present and future. Now, we're here to talk about your recording of Brahms' Ein deutsches Requiem, the German Requiem, but I thought would actually begin somewhere else, musically speaking, as I've taken the opportunity to meet you in person whilst we were visiting London, where last night you gave an extraordinary performance of another monumental choral work from an earlier era, Bach's St. John Passion, at the Proms. So let's actually begin there. Bach's St. John Passion, repertoire that's formed the absolute heart of your musical life for decades now, a work you've recorded twice, like St. Matthew Passion. How, when preparing for a concert like last night, do you approach such work as this? Is it something so embedded in your musical language, as it were, or is there an element of preparing it, rethinking it afresh, bringing it together anew on each occasion?
Well, we have performed already the St. John Passion many times, but in comparison with the St. Matthew Passion, the St. John Passion is kind of more difficult, to perform. But not only the technically, but the work itself, with which Bach was probably never happy, to as a complete. So that he didn't leave any definitive score. So that's actually he has repeated the performance, the revisions, the every performance and so on. And so we have a quite complicated situation with the documents, of the original documents which he left. So this year, as you know, there's a 300 Jubilee, a year's Jubilee of the St. John Passion, but actually it is not possible at all to perform according to his premiere in 1724, because no documents are extant. So that is a little pity, and at least he has he performed at least 4 times in his life, and each time the different versions, and it is now possible to so-called authentically perform according to the second version and fourth version. And the second version is the opening choir and the ending and all the details in between. There's a completely different work. So we have just done the second version, but that sounds completely different work. So that's why I decided to do the fourth version this time. That is literally the only possibility to perform St. John Passion according to his own original way.
Yeah.
So this kind of complicated situation you have to solve all the time. And also the details of many different small things, and also this is the very first Passion after his tenure in Leipzig. So probably he was very ambitious, to not only to express the Bible text and so on, but also technically he experimented many things. So sometimes, for example, the choral vocal lines crossing each other and so on. And the range was very, very difficult sometimes. And so the St. John Passion is much more complicated and not so easy. Now, St. Matthew Passion is of course not easier, but that is a kind of the kind of finished work. but St. John is not finished. So that is very interesting. But we are always struggling with to solve this and that difficulties.
Now, you've just recorded the Brahms Ein deutsches Requiem. Now, both that and the Bach John Passion we've just been talking about are, of course, powerfully religious dramas. They have a religious dimension, purpose, even rooted in the Lutheran tradition. So it might be interesting to perhaps explore some of the links as we go. But looking at the Brahms, can you set the scene for us? It was written in 1868. But what do we know of why Brahms wrote it? How he approached the text that he set?
Wow, it might look like a little surprise for you that we did Brahms, and we didn't record any Mendelssohn yet, for example. But actually, because of the pandemic time, we were supposed to make a recording session, recording projects of the Mendelssohn, Elijah and Paulus and so on. It was not possible to make a recording because of this pandemic, and but we have already performed those things. And also Mozart, Beethoven, Mr. Solomons, and so on. So I'm very much interested in doing more and more, the Christian music with religious music in 19th century as well, because none of composers in the 19th centuries are without any influence from Bach. So I think we can clearly see how much influence from Bach came, for example, to Mendelssohn and also for Schumann and also Brahms. And Deutsche Requiem is, of course, as you know, that's one of the most important religious work that is not a liturgical work, but we can see how Brahms personally see the Bibles and how he encountered the Psalms text and so on and so on. Some movements very similar to the one or two chorale melodies. That's the Cantata 93, for example. And those common elements are you can see very clearly. So firstly, I was not so much interested in Deutsche Requiem because that is not a liturgical work. So Requiem, that's the title, but actually nothing to do with the so-called usual Requiem. So, but actually in between I became more and more interested in how Brahms treated this and that psalm texts. And that is really directly connected to his personal feeling and personal, the thoughts and so on. That's very, very interesting. And musically, that's so fascinating. That's so deep and very heavy, but sometimes very dramatic. And also a lot of contrapuntal structures, polyphonic structures, and also that work is composed in 1868, and that is the first year of Meiji era in Japan. So that is, so that is when the Japan has reopened the country somehow. Yeah,
after 300 years.
Yes, exactly. And at that time already in Vienna was a Japanese consulate there, and it is known that Brahms knew some Japanese people, and the wife of the Japanese consulate had a Japanese instrument, koto, the string instruments, and Brahms has copied her the music for koto.
Right.
Yes. So in this way, this is the first composer whom we can trace the direct connection to Japan. that is very, very, interesting. So And
After the Roman Pope and the surrounding people in 16th
oh, in
century.
16th century, yes, that's true, yes. But we had unfortunately 300 years gap in between, so and I think that makes me more interested, of course, in the Brahms music.
And it's interesting what you say about the text he assembled and why he wrote it. Obviously, it has the word requiem, but it is very much about those here comforting the mourning or being with them. And it struck me listening yesterday that the Bach John Passion is very much about human beings engaging with this extraordinary spiritual experience.
Exactly.
But there's a way, in a way, the Brahms Ein deutsches Requiem, by not being sort of dogmatically the Catholic requiem, it's about that. It's about where faith and humanity meet at a very personal level.
Yes, of course. I think the Bach St. John Passion, not only St. John, but I mean the liturgical music of Bach, were composed not according to Bach's own personal feeling. Instead, that's completely the liturgical aim, liturgical function. So all the passions are meant to replace the Bible reading in the service. So Bach was really genius when he composed those passions or cantatas as well. But he made a lot of kind of tactics to express this and that was in music, but probably most of them, this kind of Bach's tricks in the music were not perceptible for the audience at that time. But Bach did very well in this way. That's why his music stays so interesting even for us now. So over the generations, over the era, and but probably he didn't mean to let the audience know about all the details at that time. Because there's all these kind of details, the symbols of for example, number symbolism, or the symbols of the this and that, the elements like for example, crossing theme, the dira, those elements are symbolized the symbol of for cross, for example, yes, and those things. Will never be known by the audience at that time, I think. But Bach himself, he did this kind of very deep symbolism, and so that makes us really enthusiastic to look into the Bach's music, of course. And but Brahms, the case is not only for that kind of symbols, but he composed the music much more personal way. So he was very much influenced from the Bach, but the music itself sounds much more romantic in a way. So that's from the personal expression much more than Bach, I think.
And obviously, we're so used to hearing your ensemble performing period performance, Bach. Did you take the same sort of approach to Brahms in terms of authenticity, however we define that in the sound world of the instruments?
It is very interesting to research about the performance practice around the Brahms time, especially brass instruments and also wind instruments are quite different from now. And so naturally we do, of course, try to come close to what Brahms used in terms of instruments and also performance practices. But actually, the more important thing is to express his music, according to our feeling. So we have worked with the period instruments from Bach's time, or even from the earlier one, and then Bach and Beethoven and Mendelssohn and Brahms and so on. So according to the period, the instruments are changed quite much. So that's why we are trying to follow as much as that kind of sound idea which a composer had. So as in Brahms' case, some instruments are quite similar to the modern instruments, but still strings are not same at the shape, lower setting of the string instrument and sound. There are plenty of details which are not the same from now, with now. So I think that's very interesting from this perspective to try to express Brahms the feeling. Yeah. So, but my goal is not to pursue only the authenticity of with the historical the researches and so on.
And in terms of the choice of soloists that you work with, the singers, for example, tell me about the soloists who will be on this recording.
I asked one of our old friends, baritone in Germany, this Johann Kupfer, who was very active in opera and still singing quite much in operas. And his very light and bright timbre, dog voice, is one of the most beautiful color, and also and his expressions are wonderful, I think. So that's why I asked him. We have worked together in earlier times very much, and but yeah, there is some gap in it. But I don't know why I remembered him again, but this is the image. Johann is very wonderful. And for soprano there's only one movement, the very, very simple lines, and that is not aria. That is a kind of obbligato of the choir and orchestra parts. And so I decided to get one of the youngest Japanese sopranos who is living in London, and her voice is so clear and how to call it? My English is very, very poor, but they're so pure and also in a way innocent sounds. That's really wonderful. So I decided to ask her.
Now, obviously, here we know the ensemble for Bach through all those extraordinary recordings on the bit. In Japan, do people think of the ensemble in a different way to perhaps we do? Here you are performing Brahms, so obviously that's different repertoire. Does it have a different sort of place in the consciousness of Japanese audiences to perhaps how British audiences think of that?
Well, Brahms' Deutsches Requiem is probably much more known in Japan than Bach's cantatas, any cantata.
Yeah.
So, and of course, some symphony orchestra or amateur choirs are performing this piece, and there are plenty of people, the really great fan of this piece. And but they all are very keen how we are doing because with the period instruments, and so the naturally sounded quite much different from
Yes.
modern orchestra. So I think yeah, well, they can appreciate the whole kind of.
And let's talk about Bach Collegium Japan more generally, because there's a shift, isn't there, in the balance of the family partnership with you, Masato, becoming ever more involved in the group's overall direction. So tell me about what the years ahead will mean for the group and your respective roles in it. Whoever wants to answer.
Well, well, I must say I'm so lucky, you know, to have sound this like this, and because I mean,
Likewise.
you know, I think the performing Bach's cantatas, the this is a job of a not to complete something. Instead, that's just as our usual life, you know, that should be going on all the time. And so Bach's cantata is a kind of everyday food for us, you know. No? So we can never finish or we can never complete as far as we are alive, you know. So in this way, this Bach's cantata must be performed, must be going on all the time. So with my ensemble and with luckily this time is with a family member, but well, in any way, so we should look for the possibility how to going on all the time. So I never meant actually to let him do this and that and then the conductor and so on. But as a natural result, we are now in this situation, which I'm very very happy. So this is really this I think this is really God's will. So that's nothing else.
And will you be perhaps exploring different repertoire areas with the group to your father?
Yes, but that's not because I am different persons, but I think a group has its own trail, and we should pursue more musical findings, and because there are too many things we don't know and too many repertoires we haven't done yet. So Brahms was one of them, but also Mendelssohn, Beethoven, or the earlier works like Monteverdi, Buxtehude, those that we didn't record. And in terms of the collaboration with my father, as he said, we were very fortunate that we can work together. And also, many people mentions that it's similar to the Kabuki theater family business style, because they have a tradition of how do you call it? Shumei is a funny word. It's like attacking the name. It's hand over the name. It means hand over the name. So if it were Kabuki theater, I will become next Masaaki, the second or something. And then Masato goes to the next generation. So this is the style in Kabuki theater. And of course, we are not copying this style at all. But maybe in Japan, people are looking at BCJs and our generational progress in this style. Yeah, do you think? I mean, yeah. So it's not like, of course, in Kabuki theater, some people would say the new generation does this and this so different, or like this is good or better or something. But actually, they are not aiming to change themselves, but as he said, to continue the theater work at its best, and then yeah, So I have no particular stress to, something like I have to be better than my father or something like. Never felt like that. But if I was asked about this collaboration, sometimes I feel people are expecting some answer like, I want to make something new and.
Wonderful to hear the Bach last night, and I hope perhaps I'll get to hear the Brahms live as well as on record when the recording comes out. Masato Suzuki, thank you so much for joining me today. An excerpt from Brahms's Ein deutsches Requiem, with Masaaki Suzuki conducting the Bach Collegium Japan, and that new recording is available on the BIS label. I hope you've enjoyed this week's podcast, and if you did, a little request from me and the Gramophone podcast team, which is please do consider taking a moment to leave us a rating or a review, to hit the subscribe button, or simply to tell your friends about our work. It really helps raise awareness of what we do. We recently hit the 1 million download mark, and it would be wonderful to make that number much larger still. Gramophone podcasts are free, but another great way to show your support is to take out a subscription to Gramophone Magazine. We produce an issue 13 times a year, which is packed full of interviews, features and reviews. And all listeners to this podcast can get a 20% discount by visiting gramophone.co.uk/subscribe and entering podcast 20 at the checkout. Thank you for listening, and do join us again for another Gramophone podcast next week.